Have you ever started planning a new facility and wondered, do I need environmental help now, or is it still too early for that? Has your contractor ever said, don't worry, we've done this 1,000 times, you're covered? And has someone, maybe even an environmental firm, told you, you're way too early, call us once the site is ready to open? Well, here's the thing that most people don't realize. The decisions that create environmental challenges usually happen long before anything is built. Let's talk about how you can avoid those. Hey there, I'm Tate Hunter from RMA, your environmental experts. Before we go any further, we actually built something to help you figure out where your project stands. It's a quick, plain English tool designed for people who are not environmental experts. You'll answer a few simple questions about your future site, the equipment you expect to have, the materials you'll use, where things are stored, and it gives you an instant snapshot of the environmental programs that you're likely to deal with once the facility is running. And just so you know, it's not a marketing trap. You don't have to give us your email, you don't have to wait for your results, you get everything right on the page the second you hit submit. If your project looks simple, the screener will tell you that. If something is worth paying attention to early, it'll flag that too. Check it out below. All right, let's get back into it. To keep it simple, here's the quick version. Big environmental problems usually start way before anyone realizes it, and the fix is getting the right eyes on the project earlier. And all of that long-term stuff that you'll eventually need, the plans, the permits, the approvals, the ongoing programs, those also become a whole lot easier if you've got an environmental team established from day one. But let's back up and walk through how this actually plays out. So here's the issue we have seen time and time again. When people start a new facility, they usually hear the same message, wait until the end, you don't need environmental help yet. And on the surface, that does seem logical. If the tanks aren't installed, you can't calculate oil storage capacities for spill plans. If outfalls don't exist, you can't write stormwater pollution prevention plans. If equipment isn't chosen, you can't file permit applications. It feels like environmental work does come after construction. But here's the reality. The decisions that determine your long-term compliance obligations, the decisions that lock you into expensive problems, happen at the planning table, not at the finish line. And when people hear come back later, they do exactly what anyone planning a construction project would do. They turn to their contractor or their engineering firm. And those companies trying to be helpful will usually confidently say something like, yeah, we've got the environmental stuff covered, no problem. And here is where it gets nuanced. Contractors have built hundreds of sites and they do know exactly what they're doing. Engineers are incredibly smart people with years of training. Many of these firms even have environmental staff or entire environmental departments, and they will handle some of the environmental hurdles that you're going to need to clear. They know construction environmental rules inside and out. Erosion control, silt fencing, temporary stormwater, grading, utilities. They know how to build the site safely and keep inspectors happy during the build, and we would never suggest replacing them. But their role is transitionary. They're there to get something built, and once the ribbon gets cut, they're on to the next project. When you hire an engineering firm or a contractor, at the end of the day, the thing you need the most is the build, the concrete, the utilities, the facility to be operational. The environmental binder that they might give you at the end is often a side deliverable. Their main job is the project, not the long-term environmental reality that you're going to be living with for decades. Now, when you hire us, that book on the shelf, the plans, permits, reporting, the long-term compliance thinking, that's the entire point. That's what people hire us for. Our incentive is to help set you up for success with the stuff that you're going to be living with for the next 10, 20, 30 years. And because the environmental perspective isn't usually brought in early enough, here is what we see all the time. A contractor will confidently say, we'll take care of your stormwater permit. But they don't make it clear that they only mean the temporary construction phase permit. And then we show up and realize that nobody ever filed the operational stormwater permit that you actually need to legally operate the site, and you've been open for months without it. Or containment gets poured around tanks, and then we'll discover it doesn't meet SPCC capacity rules, meaning an oil spill would flow right over the tops of the walls. So not only are you out of compliance, but now we have to tell you the entire wall has to be knocked out and rebuilt. Or outfalls are placed where they seem to make sense on paper, but in reality they funnel stormwater right past source materials that make staying under your permit limits a nightmare. Or equipment gets chosen without anyone realizing that one model requires an air permit with all kinds of added ongoing responsibilities, while another would have been exempt and not have needed a permit at all. And that's one of the best things about our tool. It shows you where all of these exact issues are likely to show up at your facility. which long-term environmental programs you're likely to trigger, where your contractor or engineer might not be thinking far enough ahead, and where our team steps in to cover those gaps before they turn into expensive problems. It's basically a quick way to see the blind spots now instead of discovering them after everything is built. And all of that is why we offer our environmental construction advisory service. Now, this is not engineering, it's not construction management, we're not redesigning your project. We're providing the missing environmental perspective, the one that's focused on that 10, 20, 30-year operational reality that you're going to be living with long after the contractors and the engineers are gone. And here's what that looks like. We help you evaluate or choose your site with future environmental compliance in mind. Before anything is signed, we look at zoning quirks, sensitive areas, local regulations, impaired water bodies, environmental justice zones, all of the things that can dramatically shape what you're going to need later. We review early plans, not to take over your design, but to point out long-term environmental consequences that others might not be focused on. Drainage paths, tank placement, where chemicals should live long-term, not just where they fit on the drawing today. What choices trigger more requirements later, and what choices are going to save you time, money, and stress. We stay available for any questions throughout construction, just enough to prevent avoidable surprises. We're your on-call environmental experts. You might only need us for a couple hours across the entire project, but having us at the right moments can change everything. We help you understand when environmental regulations become relevant and how your decisions today shape that timeline. Not just, here's a rule, but here's why this rule is going to apply to you, here's what it means in plain English, here's exactly when this rule becomes your responsibility, and here's when we should start preparing so you're ready on opening day. And that leads into the part that probably saves people the most headaches. By the time all of that long-term environmental stuff finally can be done, the permits, the plans, the approvals, the reporting, all of that stuff that you've heard comes at the end, we already know your operations, your materials, your equipment, your layout, and your team. We're not starting from scratch at the worst possible moment. You don't have to explain decisions you barely remember. You don't have to onboard a brand new firm while you're exhausted. You don't have to wait weeks for plans or permits that you needed yesterday. We have everything ready the moment that you flip the lights on. Now let's talk about cost. This service is typically offered on a simple time and expense basis, which means that a lot of clients only end up paying for a few hours here and there over the course of the entire project. This is not going to balloon your startup costs or run you way over budget. You're not hiring us to sit in on every meeting. You're just tapping us on the shoulder at the key points where our perspective actually matters. So if you're gearing up for construction, even if you only have sketches or rough concepts or a napkin drawing, you are not too early. This is actually the moment when you can prevent the biggest headaches, avoid the most expensive mistakes, and set your future operations up for success. And hey, if you're still wondering whether your site might even need early environmental help, scroll down and try the screener below. It gives you an instant snapshot without needing to talk to anyone. On the other hand, if you are ready to talk and you're planning a new facility, an upgrade, or an expansion, reach out to us at RMA. Let's get ahead of the environmental side of your project while everything is still easy to change. Catch you in the next one.